I was at my local gaming store and saw this halfling rogue and giant spider miniature next to each other on the shelf, and I thought, well, that looks so familiar. Where have I seen a halfling fighting a giant spider? That sounds so familiar, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Well, let's get started. Maybe I'll figure it out. After unpackaging everything, I accidentally shattered the base that the spider was on, and so you can see that there. I'm going to cover that up with some epoxy putty later, but for now, you can see the spider's legs are a little crushed on this side. I'm actually going to keep it that way. It'll work well for the scene, and the rest of the spider looks pretty good though. My halfling figure also looks pretty good, but there is some slight separation around the hairline where the two halves didn't quite meet perfectly, as you can see here. And so I'm just going to take some 2-part epoxy and very carefully fill in that space. You'll also see me using that epoxy to fill the hole in the base of the spider where the stand was. As that epoxy cures, I can start working on the base. And for the base, I'm going to be using this lid off of this wooden craft box. It's a good size and it has space underneath for the electronics. To build up the cliff walls and faces, I'm going to be using this 1-inch XPS foam. It's an insulation foam that I use quite often in my builds. I just stack it up and then I'll carve out the basic shape using a jeweler's saw. Now, a hot wire tool would have worked the best for this, but I don't have one, and my jeweler's saw actually worked pretty well in keeping the dust down. I dry fit all the foam together, and it still leaves me plenty of room for my giant spider and my halfling, which at this point you probably have realized they are Sam and Shelob from Lord of the Rings. I stack the parts together, and using foam-safe superglue, I adhere them together. Then once it's cured, which doesn't take very long, I can start to cut out the basic shape of the cliff faces. I'm just removing the bulk of the material with a knife here so that when I come in with my Dremel tool and the sanding bit, I don't have to take that all off and just turn it into dust and make even more of a mess. Speaking of making a mess, this process was quite dusty, as you can see. So I'm definitely wearing my mask here, and my vacuum made quick work of all this foam dust once I was done. And a quick pass with my heat gun seals in the foam and softens some of the carving lines. Before I glue the walls to the base, I add a layer of foam core board with the paper removed, and then I clean up the edges. In the movie, there are a few stairs on the other side of the clearing, and so I quickly make those out of more of that foam core board and glue it in place. I then use a watered down Mod Podge and seal the entire project. Once that first layer of Mod Podge has dried, I add a second layer just to the base here, and this is so that I can glue on some dirt. This is just normal dirt that I stole from outside, and I just sprinkle it on with a sifter to give a nice even coat over the entire base. Then once I am satisfied with the coverage, I seal it in place with some isopropyl alcohol and, you guessed it, more watered down Mod Podge. Hashtag not sponsored, but if you're listening, Plaid Enterprises, owner of Mod Podge, I would not say no to a sponsorship. Pretty please, with a Mod Podge cherry on top. Anyways, I'm cutting out some chipboard here, and I'm just going to cover up all of the edges. My foam was not cut super cleanly. It was cut at kind of a weird angle, so I'm just using these to cover it up like a frame on a picture or something like that. I also cut a hole in the back, and this will be for the electronic switch later on. Now, this scene would not be complete without Mr. Frodo all wrapped up in spider webs, and so I take a little piece of wood here, and I use my original model just to get a size reference, and I trace out a basic hobbit shape in the wood, and then I cut it out with my jeweler's saw. After a bit of carving with a knife and a bit more sanding with a few sanding sticks, I have a completed tiny Mr. Frodo shape. And this doesn't have to be super accurate because the whole thing is going to get covered in spiderwebs. Speaking of that, I was thinking, what should I use for spiderwebs? and I found this. It's a used dryer sheet, which normally would just be trash, but I'm going to use it in this project. It's got some really great webbing look to it, and I'm just going to cut off a small piece and wrap Mr. Wooden Frodo in it. I do one wrap to begin with, and it looks pretty good, but I decided to do two and give it that extra coverage. Moving back to my Sam model, you can see the fixed hairline here, and he's in a really good pose. I actually really like it. I just want to replace this little lantern with the magic glow stick that is the Phial of Galadriel. And of course, I'm going to try to make it glow. And to do that, I'm going to use these tiny pre-wired 3-volt LEDs. Now this one is in a warmer light than I would have liked, but I will just have to make do. The first thing I do is very carefully cut off the lantern that he's holding and try not to cut off his tiny little hand. Luckily, I was successful in removing the lantern and not his hand, and then off camera I was able to glue the new LED in place and then try and hide the LED wire by running it down his arm, around his body, and down his leg. And to build out the phial itself, and it is phial with a PH and not vial with a V, I'm using UV resin. And this is the same technique that I've used in the past when I build my candles. I work one layer at a time, curing the resin with a UV light in between each layer. After the second layer, I add a small piece of fishing line, and this will act as the stem of the phial. And then I add one more layer of resin and cure it with the UV light. It's not perfect, but at this scale, at least it's the right shape and it'll get the point across. Then to protect it, I'm using this liquid mask here and covering it so that when I spray paint it with my flat black primer, it won't cover up all that hard work. I also add a wire to Shelob to prepare them for painting. Off camera, I built this tiny little backpack for Sam using some beads and some foam. And everyone gets a coat of flat black primer to prepare for painting. And just to show how small this model is, he is less than an inch tall, and there's my pinky for scale. I'm going to start by painting Shelob, and she's actually relatively simple to paint because she's just a giant black spider, but the rest of the diorama is also black, so I start with a dark gray dry brush to try to bring out some contrast. With this diorama, I'm trying to balance between recreating the scene from the Peter Jackson film while also adding in my own artistic choices. Like this purple wash that I'm adding to try and give her some extra color. I make a few other artistic choices throughout this build, influenced by the materials I was working with, my time constraint, and just the skill level I have at this time. For example, on the Halfling Rogue model that I got, they're wearing boots. And of course, in the film, Sam and all the other hobbits don't wear shoes. And I could have taken the time and cut off the shoes and made little feet and everything like that, but I decided to just paint the boots and call it good. At the end of the day, this diorama was inspired by the scene in the film, but I wasn't trying to make an exact replica. I'd also like to take this time to thank my patrons. Not only do you inspire me to continue making videos, but your financial support makes it possible to buy materials and paints to continue making videos. If you would also like to have your name flying across my screen and to support me directly, you too can join my Patreon. I'll have links in the description, at the end of this video, and on my page. And not only do you get your name shouted out in every single one of my videos, you also get access to some cool behind the scenes photos that no one else gets to see. Moving on, I'm going to start painting Sam's backpack, and for that I'm going to use these colors that I'm showing here. And I started the painting off camera, but I'm just using that green to paint the bedroll and that metal color to paint the pots and pans that hang from the backpack. To add a bit of weathering and to blend everything together, I'm going to be using this mummified grime as a wash and give everything a nice even coat. I knew that painting my Sam model would be a challenge for me. Not only is it my third or fourth miniature I've ever painted, it's also extremely small. I'm using a technique called layering. Basically, I start with a dark brown-red coat for the skin, and then I slowly add a lighter and lighter coats in smaller and smaller amounts, adding artificial light and shadow. The lighter skin tone only gets added to areas where the light would hit, So that would be the forehead, the bridge of the nose, the upper cheekbone, and the jawline and chin. This is a somewhat similar technique to how you would do contour makeup, so my semester of makeup in college is actually paying off. After adding my final lightest layer, I give it a wash using that Crusader skin wash and blend everything together. All the skin tone painting was definitely the hardest part and took me about 30 minutes to get everything done, and so the rest was relatively easy in comparison. I'm still using that same layering technique where I start with a darker color and then slowly layer on lighter and lighter tones, giving that artificial light and shadow. The last thing I do is paint the tiny sting in his hand and glue his little backpack in place. Moving my attention back to the base, now that all the glue is dry, I can spray it with a coat of flat black primer, and then using a concoction of all of these colors, I make kind of a bluish green wash that I add to the base. In the movie, this scene takes place at night, and so it has this ghostly, moonlit green glow to everything, and that's what I'm trying to emulate with this greenish color. The walls will also get that green color, but through a dry brushing technique. I start by dry brushing on some dark gray black and then slowly get lighter in gray color, and then finally I'll add that green dry brushing on top. The reason I do this is to try and give the green something light to sit on so that the color pops a bit more. I'm jumping back to my Sam model here. Originally I was going to keep this base on, but then I realized I would have had to blend it into the base by adding more soil and then repainting everything. So what I'm going to do is very carefully cut him from his base and cut the wire as well, and hopefully I don't break anything. And luckily I was successful in cutting him free without issue, or so I thought. In the struggle, I must have accidentally broken off the soup pot that he carries, so I'll quickly replace that. I can then quickly drill a hole in the base for the wires and install Sam with a bit of superglue. I also install Shelob with a bit more superglue on her legs, and little Frodo. I install the switch in the back, wire up all the electronics, and with that, this project is pretty much done. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video. If you did enjoy this video, please consider dropping a like, consider subscribing. I've got a whole bunch of other videos on my channel, and if you like this one, I'm sure you'll like at least a few others. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, put them down in the comment section and I'll try to get back to you. I really like reading every single comment, and I do read every single comment, and I try to respond to them if I can. One more big shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. Thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.